My name is Riccardo Zane. I run Agencycom in New York and Chicago. Although if I don't do well at this, I'm going to run nothing because it's all about social media and consumers owning that. Paul mentioned earlier on about big agencies and not knowing anything about social media. I do want to dispel that myth. Two quick thoughts. First of all, there are no such things as big agencies anymore. And then secondly, I don't have a deck. So I'm just going to talk to you straight out. We've recently done some pretty good things online, or we think they're pretty good. Most recently, the Skittles.com site. That was a really interesting experience. I can talk a little bit about that as I go through this. But as a company, Agency.com has been around since 1995. Really thinking a lot, not about social networking or social media, but really about the novelty and opportunity around the interactive space and how we would do that. And over the course of the last, 13 years, we've recognized that there's always something new that's a specialty lab. So we've been creating specialty labs. We've got 8 specialty labs right now, everything from engagement to mobility to digital out of home and so on and so forth. Obviously, social media is one of those labs. And as I keep thinking about it, I keep thinking that this is the be-all and catch-all of a lot of those other things. Because when you think about email, is that increasingly a social media thing? Last week, there was a study showed that in North America, there were more people connecting with each other on social media and social sites than in email. Just think about that, the size of that. And about 6 months ago, there were more people connecting with each other on phones through SMS and text than using the phones for a phone. That was about 6, 7 months ago. So when you think about all that stuff, it's all going towards social media, connecting and networking in the way that we always have, but we just haven't had that device or that connection that we could have with the ubiquity of people around there. So as Agency.com, we've looked at this space for a long, long time. And over the last 2-3 years, we've done some pretty good things. Agency.com, by the way, has Hewlett-Packard, Nike, we do British Airways, Mars, Master Food, a number of activities around some Apple iTunes, and so on. So we've been looking at that for a while now. Within the social media practice, what we've looked at is specifically areas around how we can think about empowering consumers in a way that does things in a way that supports that brand, but at the same time empowers that consumer in a way that they may not have felt. So Skittles.com is, we think, a pretty good example. We've done some work with BA called Metro Twin as well. You might want to look at that. Skittles.com was a unique idea that we went to the client with and said, if they ever sign up for this, it'll be an amazing thing. And they did sign up for it. It's an overlay. If you go to Skittles.com, it's not a website. It's an overlay on top of Twitter right now. We can put it against MySpace. We can look at it against Flickr. We can look at it against YouTube. And essentially what it does is it overlays what other people are talking about Skittles. So it's not about what we're saying or what the brand is saying. It's really about what other people are saying. A unique thing, some of you may have looked at that, and it's a pretty historic event. Now, people have said we've compared it or we've copied other people and so on. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has inspired that, but this is the first time within a CPG or FMCG space that's done this. And it's done it in a unique way. So the myth that I have to talk about is using consumer-generated content relinquishes brand image control. Now, we didn't decide to do this because we felt Skittles didn't need consumer control. We decided to do this because it was the consumer that empowered our brand. And our brand was really one of those brands that said, we've got a connection between who we are as a brand. Everyone, how many people here love Skittles? Or how many people don't love Skittles? That's probably an easier question. It's like 2 people, 3 people. You're going to love Skittles? No. Skittles is a great brand. Very few people don't love Skittles. And as a result, we knew that a lot of people were talking about Skittles online in different ways. What we wanted to do was capture what people were talking about, good or bad, and make sure that other people knew that that was a positive brand experience. A, because people like Skittles. B, because consumers could generate, in fact, they have generated a significant amount of work around Skittles, content around Skittles. And then third, because the brand was letting people talk about it without putting any kind of policing in place, which was a very unique thing for a client. 5 years ago, Subservient Chicken came out, more than 5 years ago. And Crispin Porter at the time may not have necessarily thought about it as a social media kind of thing. It was a unique idea. But how many people have been looking at Crispin Porter over the last 5 years and say, what are you doing with that? What are you doing with Burger King? I want a Crispin Porter. I want a viral campaign. I want something like that. If we didn't know what we were doing because consumers could do it, why would Crispin be still in business? And I think they're doing a great job, by the way. Why would Ogilvy, where Paul works, still be involved with trying to answer all the questions about Dove and evolution and everything that came before that? Why would there still be a need for so many of you in attendance today being interested in social media? It's not about just the consumers. The way we've looked at it is to say, in our minds, it comes down to three simple things. First of all, it's about the brand. It's not easy to launch a brand without having some other component to it. So you can't just necessarily launch a brand without it. So brand is either a traditional kind of thing or multimedia kind of component. Yes, you can launch a brand without having a traditional media campaign, but it becomes hard. And so those things are still being looked at. So brand is important in all the ins and outs of what a brand is. Number two, it's culture. It's the culture of that brand within that culture, but it's about a culture in terms of what that consumer is doing within that culture. You look at Dell 3 years ago, when the consumer services issue were hitting them, and there was a great line in The Long Tail that said, it's not about what you say your brand is, it's about what Google says it is. The idea of it is that because Dell did not support the customer service issues, people kept jumping in and commenting about Dell's customer service to the extent that Dell's share price dropped dramatically, let alone their overall revenues. It's because they weren't handling that properly. It's not just about consumers, it's about how you handle those consumers and how you shift them over. The Net Promoter Score, NPS, that Paul spends a lot of time speaking to people about really well, is a great example of, would you recommend this company? And it's not just about the consumer, it's about R&D, it's about various other initiatives related to that brand and that culture. And finally, you get to that consumer that says, you know what, just because I have a voice doesn't mean my voice is heard. Just because my voice is heard doesn't mean everyone agrees with me. You look at the election recently. Obama got through because of grassroots campaigns on a state-by-state basis because of this ability to recognize what was important to comment on and what was important not to comment on. And it's important to make sure that other people, in that case the electorate, people voting, recognize that there were some things that they were consistent with, that Obama was consistent with.